So last week's Abu preached such an incredible message. For those of you here, wasn't that incredible? He spoke about personal revival, us having love encounters. He spoke about that judgmental spirit that we are so, man, that just wrecked me. We are so easy to judge other people, not recognizing the big old lock in our own eyes. And so this morning I sort of want to carry on with that because I really felt God breathed on that. He breathed on that. We love speaking in this house about revival. We love about speaking about the presence, about love encounters. And so I want you to go with me in your Bibles to Luke 15 this morning. And we're going to visit a portion of Scripture that we're all so familiar with. But I believe that this morning God's actually going to reveal portions of this Scripture that you've never seen before. I really believe that for this morning. And so as you turn there to Luke 15, just the background, we're going to speak about the prodigal son or the good father. And so just the background, when Jesus showed up to this community of believers or to this community, he showed up to the Jews of his day, and he was talking to a group of people who were they were experts on God. They literally knew everything that there was to know about God. It was part of Jewish culture from a young age. They were taught the Torah. They were taught the Bible, so to speak. And they know everything about God. They were told by their fathers, their grandfathers, their great-grandfathers. And it's been passed on from generation to generation through their culture, through their tradition. They knew everything about God. And so Jesus steps onto the scene, and he, apart from the other assignments that he came to give us, one of the assignments was to come and really show the Jewish people, to come and show us what the Father was really like. So he started sharing stories, he started sharing parables to explain to us what the Father was really like. And there's no story, in my opinion, that describes the heart of the Father better than the story of the prodigal son. And it shouldn't actually be called the prodigal son. It should really be called the story of a good father and two sons who didn't really knew the heart of the Father. So Jesus wanted to give this Jewish community such a revelation of what the Father was really like. And my prayer by the Spirit of God this morning is that He's going to give you a fresh revelation. That He's going to cut down some of those cords that is holding you in bondage to the revelation of who Papa God really is. So, the story of the prodigal son is actually a story of family. It's really about a story of family dynamics and the nature of the Father. So, let me just get there. You're all there in your Bible, so Luke 15. If you only got a Bible on here, go to the logo shop. You'll get discount there. Go and buy yourself a Bible. Because we love the Bible. Luke 15. We're going to read there from verse 11. And he said, this is Jesus speaking, a certain man had two sons, and the younger of them said to his father, we just break up that spirit of familiarity. We break up that spirit of religion, and man, we know the Scripture. I don't know what I'm doing here. This message should be for someone else. Let's just laugh at that lie. Ha ha. This message is for all of us. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. So he divided to them his livelihood. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with prodigal living. But when he had spent all, there arose a severe famine in that land, and he began to be in want. Then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the field to feed swine. And he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pots that the swine ate. And no one gave him anything. But when he had come to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare? And here I am, perished with hunger. I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was still a great way off, his father saw him, and he had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring out the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And bring the fatted calf here and kill it. And let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And he began to be merry. Now his oldest son was in the field. And as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of his servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, Your brother has come, and because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf. But he was so angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. So he answered and said to his father, Lo, these many years I've been serving you. I've never transgressed any of your commandments at any time. And yet, you never gave me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as a son of yours came, who has devoured your livelihood with harlots, you killed the fatted calf and you gave it to him. And he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad. For your brother was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now is found. I believe what I'm about to share with you this morning, there's a timeliness to this word. And I want you to really open your hearts, because this is really applying to all of us. And by the end, I trust that you'll understand why I'm saying this. And so how we're going to respond this morning is really how we're going to position our hearts for what God wants to do in this next season. And so let's start right here at the beginning. Jesus using an earthly story here to explain an earthly reality and to really paint a picture of what the Father is really like. And he tells it in such an incredible way that it almost demands a response from his listeners. He's going to demand a response from you and me. And so he starts off by saying, there was a father. There was a father, and this father had two sons. And then one of the sons came to him and he said, Father, Dad, give me my inheritance. Now I want you to think about this. What needs to happen for you to receive an inheritance? Anyone? In order for you to receive inheritance, someone have to die. So this young man, this son comes and says, Father, it would be financially beneficial for me if you are actually dead right now. But here we are, you're not dead. However, I don't want to wait that long. I want my inheritance right now. I want my inheritance right now, and I don't know, we don't have to see one another again. Just give me my portion and what belongs to me. Now, I want you to think about the insulting nature of that comment. Think about the dishonoring nature of the son's request. And then Jesus, he tells a story like this, that the father actually grants the son his request. But then the father doesn't just give his inheritance just to the younger son, but he gives it to his older son too. Now I want you to picture yourself in a scenario. Imagine that you're a father, or even a mother. But imagine you're a father, and your son comes to you and says, man, I wish you were dead. I just wish you were dead so I can have all your money. I really don't care about living here with you anymore. Just give me what belongs to me. And then he takes his money, and the father knows that he's going to take his money, he's going to go to Vegas and spend it all on gambling, on booze, on drugs, and on prostitutes. Now, as a father, if your son comes to you with that request, as a father, would you empower that? No, absolutely not. Thank you. There's some person here that's honest with me here this morning. You won't do that. You will not empower your son. You won't give him his inheritance knowing that he's going to take that money, spend it on drugs, on prostitutes, and waste his life away. In fact, you would never allow that. You won't like, man, I don't care if you are miffed with me already, judge me in your heart, but I'm not going to grant you that request. So, as a father, why would you do that? And so, this father in this story, and the way Jesus tells the story is, this father doesn't just push back. He doesn't even reason with his son. In fact, the father just grants what the son asks for. And without even admitting it, let's just be honest. If that was us, I think we would all say as parents, if we are honest, we would do it so much differently. You see, so often we look at the Bible with religious lenses on. But if that was you, you would not do it. As a parent, you would do it so much differently. And we can find ourselves sitting here and judging the parenting skills of this father. So Jesus begins the story and he generates an offense in the hearts of his listeners. And that should actually generate an offense in your and my heart. At this kind of freedom that the father grants to his son. And so he starts with the story and everyone judge the way this father deals with his son. We all judge the father's parenting skills, and Jesus hasn't even begun his story almost. See, this is what you and I have to understand. He said, God displays such a high value on this concept called freedom. God has such a high value for freedom that it will offend your religious mind. It will offend the church. It will offend us. And it continues to offend so many people in the church today when we extend freedom to other people. Pastor Corne, have you seen, how the heck can you get that person to serve on a team? Do you know what they are doing? You know how they live their lives? You allow them in your church. Do you know the lifestyle that they live from Monday to Friday? Isn't it shocking that the God of the universe, the God who clearly states what he likes and what he dislikes, what he loves and what he hates, that even when you go out as a child, as his child, and you realize that not only is he going to allow you to make stupid decisions, that even when you stop being a son, He will never stop being a father. So the father looks at this son of his and he goes, you want to pretend that I'm dead? You just want to you want to go and violate everything that you know is so dear to my heart. You want to go and break my heart and violate all our values as a family. And son, I know, I'm a dad. I know what you're going to do with that money. I know where you're going to go when you leave here. But hey, okay, if that's what you want to do. And the father allows it. He doesn't bless it, but he allows it. Maybe this father knows something that we don't know. Maybe this father knows that the journey of this son to the pig's pen is actually going to be what's going to get him back to the heart of the Father. You know, maybe some of you are here this morning. I know most of us, I think. We have family. And we have kids around the world. We have family and friends, children. And you're thinking, man, the devil's got my child. The devil has taken my children. No. No. Stop reasoning. Stop thinking like that. Because what you need to understand is the devil is a thief. The devil can never legally owe that which he has stolen. The devil owes no one and he owes nothing. He has no legal access to that. So you, instead of being depressed and feeling disempowered by your children or your family being in the world, rather rejoice that you serve a good Father and that your prayers are powerful and effective. And your prayers will cause those prodigals to come home. Not your fear of the devil and his hold in their lives. Love will bring your prodigal home. So this son goes out and he does his things and finally comes to his end and he runs out of money and he runs out of friends. He's got nowhere to go. Nobody wants to take him in. He can't find a job. And he ends up not even having enough money for food. So he starts living amongst the pigs and eating the food that is fed to the pigs. And then we read here, we see that this son, he finally comes to his senses. He has a moment. And he thinks, man, you know what? At my father's house, back home, even the servants are living better than I'm doing right now. Even the servants are eating better than what I'm eating right now. And so this son decides, I'm going to make up a speech. I'm going to make up a speech of what I'm going to tell my father. And if you read that story, I don't know if you pick that up, but the son is actually not repentant. He's not sorrowful. He's just sorry that he's run out of money and out of food. He's not going home because he's sorrowful. He's going home because he's fed up of eating filthy food with the pigs. So he makes up this speech to persuade his father. And he makes up this speech not to persuade the father, not to receive him back as a son, but just to receive him back as a servant. Father, it's fine. I will just be a servant. Just give me a job. And that would be better than what I'm living as right now. See, that's the danger of sin. See, sin will do two things in your life. Sin will first and foremost distort your image of yourself. Sin comes and tell you that you're not worthy of love. You're not worthy to be a son. Sin will tell you that, you know what, it's better for me just to be a servant in my father's house. I'm just going to work for him. I'm just going to do the right thing. I'm going to go kumbaya, and that will be enough for me. It distorts your image of who you are. But second of all, it also distorts your image of what the Father is really like. That you don't actually understand how good He is, and you are quite content not to live as a son, but just as a servant. Not realizing that actually the Father's heart is always for you to be in family, as Ross was pointing out this morning. And there's so many of us that are sitting in church today, sitting in churches around the world, that are so content just to be a servant in your Father's house. That you don't actually have a relationship with Him. You don't know Him intimately. You're just content to come to church Sunday after Sunday, just working for Him, saying the right thing, doing the right things, because you have a distorted view of what the Father is really like. And you're wondering, man, I just feel so abandoned. I feel so alone. I don't feel part of family. Just being content to be a servant in the house. So here comes the prodigal son. He's made up his speech, his repentant speech. And as he approaches the father, because the father's been sitting there on the porch, the father sees him. And the father runs out to him. And that's such a display of the father's passion and his delight in you. Father doesn't care about his dignity. The father doesn't care about protocol or reputation. And he runs to his son. And the son says, man, why is dad running towards me? So the son sees the father running and he's like, okay, well, Father's coming. I've rehearsed my speech. I know exactly what I'm going to say to him. But the son doesn't even get a word, and the father comes. Before the son could finish his speech, the father just tackles him, and it's just, boy, I'm so glad you are home. Man, it's so good to see you, my son. My son, you are home. And finally, between all of that, the son finally gets some words out. And he's like, Father, Dad, Dad, I've sinned against heaven, and I've sinned against you. Now I just want to tell you that I'm not even worthy to be your son. But before the son can even finish, the father doesn't even respond to that. He doesn't even listen. He turns to his servants. He says, bring me the best robes. Bring me the best clothes. Bring the ring. Bring his sandals and put it on this boy of mine. And I mean, that's a sermon in itself, and I'm not going to preach on now, but the father, prophetically in that moment, he restores to the son back his identity. He restores back to him his authority, and he restores back to him his place in the family. Because that's what the robe and the ring and the sandals represents. An amazing thing is the son doesn't even have to work for any of that. He doesn't have to work for that love. He doesn't have to work for any of this love and this extravagant abundance, grace that has been bestowed upon him. You know why? Because in the Father's eyes, he has never lost it. It was always his. See, again, sin will alter your view of the Father, but it will never alter the Father's view of you. See, you and I have one assignment in this life. We really have one assignment in this life. Find out what the Father thinks towards you. And then partner with that and believe that. Come into alignment and in union with that. That's your one assignment. Father, how do you feel about me? And then align with that. Never entertain a thought that the Father doesn't have of you. See, through the Father's eyes, you are desirable. Through the Father's eyes, you are loved. Through the Father's eyes, you are loved. You're accepted. He believes in you, even in your darkest moments, even though you smell. And you're filthy. He still loves you. And so the Father reveals His love and in His grace to this boy in this incredible way. And then he goes and he says, turn up the music, light up the fires. It's cheese and yama time. Nou gaan ons braai. Stay calm. We're going to braai. Bring out the meat. Bring out the karaoke machine. It's time to party. My son is home. And so this party is going on. People are coming from all over because they know this guy is so generous. There's going to be food enough for everyone. And so the party starts, and the older brother has no clue what is going on. Why? Because he's out working. He's out working in the fields. And so finally, he hears this music, and he comes in, and he asks one of the servants, "Hey, what's going on? What's all the commotion? What did I miss? What's going on?" And one of the servants turns to him and says, You don't know? Man, your little brother is home. He's back. Your father's welcomed him. In fact, your father was the first guy to welcome him home. And he's organized a big party for your younger brother. And as the older brother hears this, we read here, man, he is furious. He is fuming. And he's like, there's no way. I mean, this guy's like, man, he's bliss. He's like, what? What the heck is my father doing? And so the father hears about this. He sees that his older son is not around. So the father goes out. Like he did for the younger son, the father goes out to go and speak to his son. It's like, hey, son, what's going on? Talk to me. I'm your dad. What's going on? And this boy is fuming, man. And it's like he's giving his mind. He's giving a full blow at his dad. Dad, what the heck? Man, I've been working. I've been working so hard. I've been obedient. I've been obedient to you. I've done everything that you've told me to do. Everything that you've told me to do, I've done it. Not just that. Every Sunday, I'm there at the table in your house. I've done all these things. I've worked so hard for you. I've never done anything wrong. And yes, your son. And by the way, do you know what your son has done? Now think about that. Jesus put that intentionally in there. How did the older brother know what his younger brother was doing? He was probably gathering dirt on him. He got some intel that he can use against his younger brother. Isn't that what we sometimes, but do you know what so-and-so did? How do you know about so-and-so? But this older brother is furious. All these years I've worked for you. And you've never even given me a goat. And yet you give him the fatted calf. And you gave that. And did you hear the language he says? He's not saying to my brother, he's saying, you're giving this to this guy, to your son. Not my brother, to your son. This guy who's wasted his money on prodigal living, prostitutes, guy who wish you dead, and you're doing more for him than you're doing for me. So what's the older brother doing here? The older brother is expressing an offense at the grace that the father is giving to this kid. For free. A kid who hasn't done anything to deserve this kind of grace. And restores him right back to a place of identity, of belonging, of authority. You got your position back. And the older brother is offended at the grace of the father. It was given free to this brother of his. And the older brother, he just freaks out. This guy does not deserve this. And he's contemplating now finding a new church. Because that church, it's just hyper grace. That church has gone too far with the amount of freedom that they're extending. I've been going to that church for 15 years. This guy walks in here for 2 weeks. and everyone treats him like a rock star. He hasn't worked his way up yet. So Jesus generates this offense not just at the parenting skills, the freedom that is extended by a father to his child, but also the amount of grace, the offensive nature of grace that is extended. Whew! So then, the father, Jesus takes us into this conversation with the elder brother. This brother who did it all right. He kept all the rules. He was a good Christian boy. A guy who worked really hard. And now this older brother is angry at the father's grace. And the father, I love it, the father responds to him not by rebuking him, but by doing the exact same thing that he did with the younger brother. Because like the younger brother, this older brother, he didn't have a clue what the father was really like. The older brother believed lies about the father as much as the lies that the younger brother believed about the father. And the reality is that neither of these two sons, the one that was in the house, the one that was outside of the house, the one that was in the church and the one that was outside of the church, actually knew what the father was really like. But wait, wait. You're getting controversial now. The older brother wasn't a sinner. How can you say that the prodigal son, the guy who's living in sin, is the same as the other guy? The older brother, he kept all the rules. He never missed a thing. He didn't sin. Never do we read there in the Bible that this older brother sinned. Let me tell you something about sin. Sin is not just the naughty things that you do. Sin is not just sleeping with someone out of marriage. Sin is not just getting drunk or losing your temper at work. It's not just those little things. That's a part of sin. You know what another part of sin is? Sin is any barrier. Sin is any mindset that creates a barrier or separation or distance between you and the Father. This older brother was just as guilty as the younger brother. It was just expressed differently. Remember that portion of scripture in John 10, where Jesus comes and he says, I am the door to the sheepfold. The only way you get to the Father is through me. Then he goes on and he says, Jesus goes on and he says, the thief comes only to what? To steal, kill, and destroy. In other words, Jesus is saying, if you come to the Father any other way than through me, through the door, you're a thief and a robber. Now, when we look at that scripture, when we read John 10, we think that the thief that Jesus is speaking here is the devil. Now, the devil, we know that the devil is a thief. He kills, he robs, and he destroys. But Jesus is not speaking about the devil in this story. Jesus is saying that there's a way for you to come to the Father, for you to have a revelation of the nature and the goodness of God. And you're not going to get it through any other way than through me, through grace, through my Son, Jesus Christ. If you try and climb through the wall through your works, through your obedience, through your effort, you are nothing else than a robber, a thief. And what Jesus is describing in John 10 is not the devil, he's talking about religion. Because religion will cause you to go to the Father through your effort, trying to be pleasing to the Father instead of just coming to Jesus, and there's so much freedom and grace. And Jesus is basically revealing here the nature of the older brother's heart too. That you know what? You can be in bondage. Whether you live like a pig amongst drugs and prostitutes, or whether you sit in church and you try and work your own way into being accepted by the Father. That is a thief. He's speaking about religion, that religious spirit. Religious systems create barriers that you have to work to be qualified, to be good enough. See, the older brother in this story that we just read, the older brother represents every good Israelite who did all the right things. They went to the synagogue, they followed all the rules, all the traditions, and yet they still didn't know the Father. And that barrier was just as much with the older brother towards the Father as it was with the little brother. And how do you know how this older brother is going to maintain that barrier? By judging the Father's grace and holding the younger brother's sin against him. And isn't that exactly what religion does? Religion will always cause you to judge other people's motives. It will always cause you to judge the Father's grace and the sin of your brothers. And you know what? To everyone else, it looked like, man, that's just a solid Christian that doesn't compromise on anything. He's got good spiritual disciplines. He's in the Word. And so it's good for you to challenge other people. No, that's just religion. I don't want to compromise because I'm a Christian. I'd rather not compromise on the love of the Father. Because when I understand the love of the Father, I don't have a desire for anything else. So instead of focusing on everything that I and you shouldn't do, rather give my full yes to Him. And when I give my full yes to Him, that stuff doesn't matter anymore. Because why do I want to violate this incredible relationship that I have with the Father? Instead of just telling people around me, you need to go through that hoop and do that course and do that thing before you'll be accepted by the Father. See, we don't mind compromising on the grace of the Father as long as it makes us look self-righteous and better than anyone else. But what Jesus is revealing in the story is that we can all have a relationship with the Father. That there doesn't have to be any separation between us. And you can be inside the house or outside the house. And it's like, just learn to see what my heart is like. Get to know me. Why did the older brother work so hard? Because he didn't know the Father's heart. And the Father turns to him and he says, son, everything is already yours. See, the son's motivation to work was to appease the Father. But when you are in love, you work because it's an overflow of your love. The younger son got all the money, and the older brother got the land. But they both missed the mark. The older brother was working so hard that he actually forgot to sit on the porch, on the stoop with his father. Imagine what would have happened if the older brother decided, instead of, why don't I just go and sit next to Dad? Dad, help me to explain. Lord, I'm struggling with this. God, look, Papa, help me to understand your heart. Dad, why are you sitting here every day? Why are you looking? Why are you staring? What's your processing? Asking the dad questions, getting to know him. But instead of doing that, the older brother stood outside in the hot sun, keeping a distance between him and the father because there was offense in his heart. And if he only would take the time to listen to his heart, allowing the father to reveal his heart to the older brother. If the older brother only would have done that, you know what would have happened? It wouldn't have been the father who ran to the son. It would have been the older brother. I believe the older brother would have outrun the father and say, "My brother is home." The father, if the older brother understood grace, he would have ran with the father. He wouldn't have allowed the father to run alone. And instead of it just being a reuniting of a father and a son, it should have been the reunion of a family. And so, this is a question this morning to all of us. What are you and I, what are we doing with this revelation that you're always with me and everything that I have is yours? Will that create gratitude in your heart? Will that allow you to respond to people differently when they sin and they mess up? Or do you still have that righteous judgment when people mess up? Will you still keep people sin against them and keep them at a distance until they sort themselves out, go and have a shower and then you come to church? Or will it allow you to extend grace and freedom to those around you? And as Jesus starts to wrap up this story, I love it. He, in a sense, he leaves it open for us to interpret. And have you ever wondered, there's been the younger brother's home, there's been a big party, all the neighbors came, everyone came. The older brother had to chat with dad. Have you ever wondered what happened that next morning when they all woke up and slept in a little bit later because it was a late night? Who do you think would make it hard for that younger brother to stay in the house? See, yeah, this is where the real problem really starts for you and me. The father is so glad that his son is back. But can you imagine the conversation that next morning between the younger brother and the older brother? Especially when the father's not around. Now, I'm just speculating here because it's nowhere in the Bible. You can't find it in the scripture. But I think we can all guess. This older brother is looking at the younger brother and he's like, "Dude, Dad might act like he's happy with you. And I know he welcomed you back into the house. But man, you really stuffed up, man. You really messed up. You see how Dad has aged? You've really stuffed it up so bad that, to be honest, Dad is actually disappointed in you. Bro, you will have to work very hard to fix this mess that you've really created. And I'm just going to introduce a new thought to you. We're going to call that discipleship and accountability. You're going to have to work really hard. In fact, I've asked some of my servants to start this Firm Foundations New Believers course. I want you to go and attend that because I want to tell you, you have to prove that you belong here. Dude, you violated everything that our dad stood for. I want to tell you, when this season of grace is over, I mean, everyone here, they welcome you back. You walk through that door, everyone welcome you back. But I want to tell you, I want to see where you are in a month's time. I've got my eye on you. So I've been here. I haven't left. You have left. I'm going to make sure that you do it right. What's the older brother doing? It's not here in the Bible, but you know where I see it a lot? Right here in church. Not in our church, in church. See, what does the older brother spirit do? What's that older brother scenario? See, when an older brother has the opportunity to speak life and courage to a younger brother, instead, what older brothers do, they start sowing doubt in younger brothers' hearts to start to question, is this grace really, is it real? Does the Father really love me? Man, I'm back now, but you know, you're right. I see all these happy people, but I see a lot of people that work really hard to keep the Father pleased. Maybe I need to start working too. And a younger brother started questioning this grace that he received. And he's like, man, you're right. I mean, I know the Father loves me. But you know what? I've been around and I realized that I don't actually measure up to my older brother. I don't measure up to anyone around here. And what does the prodigal do? After a while, he's just out of the doors again. And what does the older brother do in that moment? I knew it. I knew it. That was just fake grace. That was just fake repentance. He had that emotional thing here in the corner the one Sunday, but it lasted for 3 weeks. And they left. Never had foundations and never did what I did. That's what we do. That's why prodigal sons leave the church building. Yeah. You're welcome to say ouch too. Younger brothers leave because they've tried so hard to work for the approval, not just of the Father, but for older brothers, to keep the religious spirit happy. Instead, what should have happened is for, as I said, for when those father and older brothers sat there, the older brother should have run to his younger brother and say, bro, I want to tell you, I'm so glad you came to your senses. I want to tell you, it is real. The Father really loves you. This grace, it is true. Freedom is true. Man, He really adores you. You've messed up, but He doesn't relate to you according to your past. He relates to you the fact that you are back and you are restored. And listen, my bro, I want to tell you, that's exactly how I see you. Man, I miss you so much. Man, I missed my brother. It is not just the Father's role to reveal love to prodigal sons. It's your and my responsibility. I want to tell you, I believe there's a wave of prodigals all around the world coming back to houses, coming back to families. And they're going to come because they're going to encounter the love of a good Father. But I want to tell you, what's going to keep them to stay here is older brothers and sisters that will embrace them and show them that this stuff is real, that God is actually as good as everyone tells you. You know, Jesus is not represented in this story, but Jesus is our older brother. And Jesus leaves the 99 to go after the one. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, to what level of hell will you go to go and find a little brother or little sister sitting in a pigsty? Will you bring him home and say, man, you have such a distorted view of the Father. Let me first explain to you who you are, and let me explain to you who the Father is. Because you've got so much more going for you than sitting here. And younger brother, I've learned the lesson. I haven't messed up, but I've sat here and I've worked so hard through my effort to climb the wall. And I've realized that I was a thief without realizing it. Instead, I started to come through the door, through Jesus, knowing that I'm loved, knowing that I'm accepted, knowing that I'm forgiven. Because that's what Jesus would do to us. And if Jesus left, he left the glory, the splendor of heaven to step into the filth of humanity. He left his Father's house to come and look for you and me. And Jesus doesn't indicate it in this story. But I want you to start reading that story. It's like maybe Jesus is saying, I've already done the work at the cross. Let us be the ones who leave our Father's house. Not waiting for the Father to, while I've prayed for the prodigals to come home. I sang it this morning in worship. But I'm going to be on the porch, and I'm actually going to not wait, but I'm going to run. And I'm going to seek out. Yeah, you can put out the music. I'm going to seek out prodigal sons. You know, when Jen did that call earlier this morning of just us encountering the love of the Father, I think most of us probably had this impression that she's speaking to prodigals. I'm in sin. I've messed up. And now I'm a Christian. I'm giving my life to the Lord. Have you ever considered that she could also have spoken to older brothers that are offended at the grace of the Father, that is all judgment towards other people, that are so offended towards what other people do, that, man, we need to work hard. We need the band need to play those kind of songs. I need to be stirred up in this way. I need to be pumped up in that way for me to have intimacy with the Father. Well, Limitless Conference is going to be great, but let the prodigals come, and I'll pray. I'll be on Tuesday's prayer meeting. Let the prodigals come. Let them encounter the love of the Father. Well, which older sons are going to come and say, that's going to be my attitude coming to this conference? I want to be that older brother who looks at younger brothers and say, I'm so glad you are home. I want to show you what the Father is like. Maybe you are here this morning. Jen already gave that call, but maybe you are here this morning, you're like, man, I know that I've been a prodigal son. I've drifted so far from the Father. This morning I want to say to you, welcome home. The Father loves you. You are loved and accepted. Or maybe you're sitting here this morning and you're an older brother. And you realize, wow, there's so much self-righteousness in me. There's so much performance in me. Church need to look a certain way. People need to perform a certain way. And I realize that there's a distance between me and the Father. My relationship with the Father is defined by coming to church or by serving or doing or tithing. If that is you, then I want to say to you too, come off the land, welcome home. You are loved and you're accepted by the Father.